If we examine the studies that survive to the present concerning the etymology of Gyam-Gangsan, they are broadly divided into the theory that it derives from the Dimuttal Bodhisattva of the Avatamsaka Sutra, and the theory that Gyam-Gangsan derives from Mount Sumeru. The widely known one is the theory related to the Dimuttal Bodhisattva, but the theory related to Mount Sumeru explains the part that the theory related to the Dimuttal Bodhisattva fails to account for. If we examine how the theory that it derives from the Dimuttal Bodhisattva of the Avatamsaka Sutra became a topic of discussion, this dates from the Joseon period. Dimuttal is a transliteration of the Sanskrit dharmogata, meaning to give rise to the Dharma. It signifies Buksung Biopyung, or Biopsung, and this is also called Bukji. Therefore the Dimuttal Bodhisattva is a transliteration of the Bukji Bodhisattva. According to the annals of the Joseon dynasty, when King Tajong asked his officials, whenever Chinese envoys come, they invariably wish to see Gyam-Gangsan. What is the reason for this? Haryan and others reported, it is because the story of Gyam-Gangsan is recorded in the Tripitaka, and has thus become widely known throughout the world. The name Gyam-Gangsan appears in the 80-fascicle Avatamsaka Sutra, a scripture slightly later than the 60-fascicle Avatamsaka Sutra, translated by Sixananda between 695 and 704 inches in the midst of the sea. There is Gyam-Gangsan, where bodhisattvas have dwelt since ancient times. Now the Bukji Bodhisattva resides there, dwelling together with more than 12,000 attendants and constantly preaching the Dharma. Since in this passage the Bukji Bodhisattva is a transliteration of the Dimuttal Bodhisattva, the Dimuttal Bodhisattva is sometimes identified as a real person of the Eastern Jin period. That is, an Indian prince is said to have actually practiced asceticism at Gyam-Gangsan in search of the Buddhist Dharma. Although the time of translation was 695 to 704, since the 60-fascicle Avatamsaka Sutra was translated in the Eastern Jin period, it is regarded as the Eastern Jin period. On the other hand, there are also many interpretations holding that Bukji, or the Dimuttal Bodhisattva, represents the exquisite, strangely shaped crags of Gyam-Gangsan, rather than being a real person. This is because there is no record that the Dimuttal Bodhisattva was actually at Gyam-Gangsan, and because the meaning of Bukji carries the sense of rising up like strangely shaped crags. If Bukji is a term expressing the appearance of Gyam-Gangsan, it may be more closely connected with the origin of the name Gyam-Gangsan. As regards the origin of Gyam-Gangsan, more meaning is contained in the term bodhisattva than in the meaning of Dimuttal, and this the author seeks to clarify in the following chapter 3, Inches the Dimuttal Bodhisattva. The book that clearly presents the location of Gyam-Gangsan is the commentary on the Avatamsaka Sutra by Cheng Guan, a monk of Tang, China. According to him, to the east of the Eastern Sea, there is a mountain called Gyam-Gang. It is not entirely gold, but from top to bottom and on all four sides, all the way up into the mountain valleys, there is gold within the flowing water and the sand. Viewed from afar, the whole may well be called gold. Moreover, the people of Hedong have transmitted from of old among themselves that on this mountain sages frequently appear. Gyam-Gangsan's coming to be venerated today as the Gyam-Gangsan of Buddhism is said to be traced to the 8th century Great Master Usung Minchi, a civil official of the late Goryeo period, wrote in his records of the history of Yogyakarta on Gyam-Gangsan according to old records of Silla, when the Dharma Master Usung first entered Ogazan and then reached Gyam-Gangsan, the Dimuttal Bodhisattva manifested himself and said to the master, Ogazan is a land where only those who have cultivation can escape the dust of the mundane world. In the Yogyakarta section of the Dongguk Yolji Sunnam, there is transmitted a legend that the place where 53 Buddhas from the country of Wolji arrived at this shore riding an iron bell, and first settled was the site of Yogyakarta. There is a record that in the time of Queen Jindik of Silla, there were 4 sacred sites, and that when the state decided great affairs, if they gathered at these sacred sites and deliberated, the matter would surely be accomplished. Gyam-Gangsan is included among these 4 sacred sites, but it is said that it is not known what historical events were plotted there. It may also be seen as the background to the tale of Prince Maui transmitted at Gyam-Gangsan. The great popularity of the Gyeomgangsan faith is regarded as belonging to the period of Yuan interference in the Goryeo period. The Gyeomgangsan faith flourished greatly during the period of Yuan interference. The Gyeomgangsan faith influenced not only Goryeo but also the neighboring Yuan dynasty, and at that time Gyeomgangsan is said to have been recognized as a Buddhist holy site of East Asia. Li Gok, a scholar and civil official of the period of Yuan interference in Goryeo, wrote in the Jangonsa stele. The Avatamsaka Sutra says that in the midst of the northeastern sea there is Gyeomgangsan, where the Demudal Bodhisattva, together with 12,000 bodhisattvas, is constantly expounding the prajna. Li Gok also described the frequent Buddhist services in that region brought about by the popularity of the Gyeomgangsan faith. The envoys of the Son of Heaven bringing incense and offerings lined the roads, and the gentlemen and ladies from all directions, not deeming a 1,000-li journey too far, came loading offerings on oxen and horses, carrying them on their backs, and bearing them on their heads, so that those who made offerings to the Buddha and the monks stood heel to heel. One may also cite the almsgiving made to Jangonsa on Gyeomgangsan by Empress Ji, famous as a figure who, having originated as a tribute woman of Goryeo, became the second empress of Emperor Shin of the Yuan. The story that, when Empress Ji at that time gave alms to Jangonsa on Gyeomgangsan, she said, "If one wishes to pray for blessings and repay heaven above, there is no place like Jangonsa on Gyeomgangsan," shows exactly the popularity of the Gyeomgangsan faith of that time, because Jangonsa, which had maintained relations with the Yuan imperial house from before, was located on Gyeomgangsan where the Demudal Bodhisattva permanently resided. Empress Ji chose Jangonsa as the most suitable temple for conducting Buddhist services to pray for the blessing of the emperor and her son. If we examine what is transmitted as records of visits by Yuan envoys, when Sholsin Sadong, a disciple of the eminent Yuan monk, Mongsan Dyogi, came to Goryeo in 1304, at the invitation of the Goryeo Buddhist community, one of the places he visited was Gyeomgangsan. Minji, who guided Sholsin Sagung to Gyeomgangsan at that time, recorded in his historical records that Gyeomgangsan was the abode of the Demudal Bodhisattva. Minji informs us that Cholsin's pilgrimage to Gyeomgangsan was carried out of faith in the Demudal Bodhisattva. Jigong, who founded Hoamsa, also designated the site of Hoamsa as a place of ascetic practice of a Buddha of the past, and visited Gyeomgangsan before building Hoamsa. When Jigong, a Yuan monk and the master of Naeomhyetun, royal preceptor of the late Goryeo period, visited Goryeo in 1326, Jigong passed through Gyeong and went straight into Gyeomgangsan, traveling about there for a month. The place Jigong sought at that time is said to have been the Bukji ritual site of Gyeomgangsan, that is, Yeojeomsa. The very naming of the ritual site as the Bukji ritual site informs us that Jigong paid his respects at Gyeomgangsan out of an expression of faith in the Bukji Bodhisattva. The theory that the origin of the name Gyeomgangsan derives from the Avatamsaka Sutra shows well the documentary records and the historical flow. However, this theory regards the name Gyeomgang as having begun from the lightning and diamond of the god Vajra. Gyeomgang is an interpretation of the Sanskrit Vajraketaka, rendered by meaning, and its meaning is said to be cutting with a strong force like the Vajra. The Vajra is said to be like the thunderbolt of the god Indra. The meaning of the title Vajraketaka Prajnaparamita Sutra comes to mean the scripture of powerful wisdom that shatters discrimination, attachment, and defilements within the mind, and leads to enlightenment. The Sanskrit word Vajra is said originally to have been a word meaning both a thunderbolt and Gumgangsik at the same time. Since Gumgangsik has a more symbolic meaning than a thunderbolt, there is a possibility that it is a later derived meaning. If Gumgangsik means diamond, then verification of whether it was known as a diamond in India at that time ought to come first. That the original meaning of Gyeomgang is closer to lightning than to Gumgangsik is also shown by the fact that the Vajra said to wield the power of Gyeomgang has a form like that of thunder. The theory that the name Gyeomgangsan is connected with the Demudal Bodhisattva is rich in documentary records and historical verification, but it is lacking in its explanation of the origin of lightning and diamond, and of the background of the combination of Gyeomgang and San. It requires a more fundamental explanation. The theory that supplements this fundamental explanation is the theory that connects Gyeomgangsan with Mount Sumeru. Meanwhile, if we examine the theory that the origin of the name Gyeomgangsan is related to Mount Sumeru, this theory is in turn divided into the theory that Gyeomgangsan corresponds to the Iron Ring Mountain, in the Buddhist cosmology, represented by the 9 mountains and 8 seas, and the theory that Gyeomgangsan is itself Mount Sumeru. First, if we examine the theory that Gyeomgangsan corresponds to the Iron Ring Mountain in the Buddhist 9 mountains and 8 seas cosmology, this is connected with the Demudal Bodhisattva theory examined above. Changgu and the state preceptor King Yang of the Tang dynasty, who on the basis of the discovered records argued that Gyeomgangsan was a mountain of the Eastern Sea, while annotating the Avatamsaka Sutra, stated that Gyeomgangsan could not be a mountain in the middle of the sea, and was clearly a mountain in the Eastern Sea region. Here, the notion that Gyeomgangsan is a mountain in the middle of the sea points to the Buddhist cosmology, whereby Gyeomgangsan corresponds to the Iron Ring Mountain of the 9 mountains and 8 seas cosmology. There is a theory that regards the Iron Ring Mountains having become today's Gyeomgangsan as due to topographical factors, and to the factor of the faith in Buddhas of the past. As for the topographical factor first, it is said to be because Gyeomgangsan, on the east coast of the Korean peninsula, having much cliff topography and rock, was a beautiful mountain that, viewed from afar, looked like shining, hard stone, that is, like Gyeomgang. In the old days people called this mountain Gyeolsan, but when Shangguan's account was transmitted and spread in our country, people gradually came to believe that the mountain of which Shangguan spoke pointed to precisely this mountain, and in the end began to call this mountain Gyeomgangsan. If we examine records related to the faith and Buddhas of the past, the faith and Buddhas of the past connected with Gyeomgangsan is also rich in traditions other than that of the Demudal Bodhisattva of the Avatamsaka Sutra. The tradition other than that of the Demudal Bodhisattva is the tradition related to the 7 Buddhas of the past. Demudal is a bodhisattva, but the Buddhas of the past are Buddhas on the same level as Sakyamuni. In the Adugira section of the Samyukusa, there is recorded the content in which Godaryang, mother of the Goguryeo monk, Adu Hwadzang, when sending her son Adu to Silla, said, "This Goguryeo does not yet know the Buddhist Dharma, but within the capital of that country, there are 7 temple sites, all of which are temple sites of the age of former Buddhas." In fact, there is a theory that the tribes, including the Sekyu clan, who lived mainly north of the Ganges River, were not Aryan whites, but a yellow race, and, in a broad sense, Mongols. The theory that the Sekyu clan would have been a yellow race was also asserted by 19th century scholars. Jigong, who founded Hoamsa, also left records related to the 7 Buddhas of the past. Besides the Demudal Bodhisattva, in the 15th year of King Chungsik of Goryeo, the Sun Master Jigong, the 108th Patriarch of India, came to Hoamsa on Chingozan in Nongju, surveyed the temple site, and said, "This is the site of a great monastery from the time of the 7 Buddhas of the ancient world." The content that Gyeomgangsan is related to the Iron Ring Mountain of the Buddhist 9 mountains and 8 seas cosmology also connects with the trichiliacosm that appears in the legend of the fairy and the woodcutter associated with Gyeomgangsan. The 9 mountains and 8 seas is said to refer, in Buddhist cosmology, to the 9 great mountains including Mount Sumeru that exist upon the Golden Wheel, that is, the Great Earth within one Sumeru world, the basic unit constituting one cosmos, that is, one trichiliacosm, together with the 8 great seas surrounding those mountains. In the Durga Agama, the Iron Ring Mountain, the 9th of the Buddhist 9 mountains and 8 seas, appears as the Vajra Ring Mountain. The Buddhist 9 mountains and 8 seas cosmology is said to appear in scriptures such as the Durga Agama Fascicle 18, inches 30, Sutra of the Ages, the Sutra on the Arising of Worlds Fascicle 1, and the Sutra on the Causes and Origins of the Arising of Worlds Fascicle 1, in sectarian Buddhist treatises such as the Abhidharmakosa Fascicle 11, and in Mahayana treatises such as the Yoga Karabhumi Sastra. Fascicle 2. It is said that although the order differs somewhat according to each scripture, the point that the Iron Ring Mountain is the 9th mountain does not differ. Among the 9 mountains, excepting the first mountain, Mount Sumeru, which is made of the 4 treasures and 7 treasures, and the 9th mountain, the Iron Ring Mountain, which is made of iron. The remaining 7 mountains are all made of gold, a jewel, and are therefore called the 7 Golden Mountains. Among the 9 mountains, Mount Sumeru is a single enormous mountain, but the remaining 8 mountains are mountains only in name, and are in reality mountain ranges. When the term Trichiliacosm is taken as the basic unit constituting the cosmos in Buddhist cosmology, Gyeomgangsan's corresponding to the Iron Ring Mountain, the 9th mountain, forms a structure of correspondence with Mount Sumeru. In fact, the theory that Gyeomgangsan is itself Mount Sumeru appeared in later ages. The theory that Gyeomgangsan is not the Iron Ring Mountain, but that Gyeomgangsan itself is Mount Sumeru, was advocated by the late Professor Guanghyun. In fact, although no document can be found that directly connects Gyeomgangsan's designation in the Avatamsaka Sutra with cosmology, one may say that the mention of Gyeomgang is associated with Mount Sumeru. Even in Buddhist cosmology, though the Iron Ring Mountain is called the 9th of the 9 mountains, mountains 2 through 8 are all mountains of gold, and only the 1st, Mount Sumeru, and the 9th, the Iron Ring Mountain, appear as actual mountains. And since in the Yin-Yang and Yijing studies as well the numbers 1 and 9 correspond to each other, there is a theoretical background for Gyeomgangsan possibly being Mount Sumeru. Although the theory that Gyeomgangsan itself is Mount Sumeru may also be inferred from Buddhist cosmology, Professor Guanghyun's theory is explained mainly from the historical aspect. The theory of Gyeomgangsan as the center of ancient civilization is the theory of Guanghyun, a former professor at Andong University, who is said to have met a mysterious death. After presenting this theory in 2005, Guanghyun presents the grounds for his theory of Gyeomgangsan as the center of ancient civilization through a triple method of evidence, documents, remains, and theory. Guanghyun graduated from the Graduate School of the Department of Fine Arts at Seoul National University and earned a doctorate in Britain for research on dolmens, and was a world-class dolmen expert. Guanghyun says that round 2300 BC, when Dangun and Emperor Yao are said to have founded their states, the existing ancient civilization collapsed through a natural disaster caused by a satellite collision. As appears in the Shanhaijing, the Book of Documents, and the Buddhist scriptures, 10 suns are said to have appeared at that time, but the sun shone only over Gyeomgangsan, while the remaining regions were covered in darkness. As the sunlight gradually spread out with Gyeomgangsan at its center, a new Bronze Age civilization is said to have propagated outward together with cone pattern pottery. The Mount Sumeru of Buddhism and the tales of the Shanhaijing are said to recount events of Gyeomgangsan at that time. The 3 grounds Guanghyun presents are: first, dolmens as artifacts; second, the Shanhaijing and the Buddhist scriptures as documents; and third, the theory of the fabrication of pyramid dating as theory. Looking first at dolmens, Professor Guanghyun says that, since more than 1/2 of the world's dolmens are concentrated in Korea, it is a fact beyond doubt that Korea is the origin of ancient civilization. However, he says that the reason Korea is not recognized as the origin of ancient civilization in the history of ancient civilization is that Britain, taking the excavation of the pyramids as an occasion, raised the chronology of the pyramids by more than 2,000 years, whereby the eras were reversed. The West, he says, thereafter expanded discourse about extraterrestrials. Professor Bien argued that if the age of the pyramids is restored to what it was before the alteration, one can confirm that all ancient relics spread out with Korea's Gyeomgangsan at the center. Here, the author will first present the factual matters concerning Gyeomgangsan, and then discuss the details in the following chapter on the Demudal Bodhisattva.